Welcome. I'm Johnita Stanton. We have Reginald Perriman, Shaka Williams. We are TSARE. This is the There's Something About Real Estate podcast where we talk all things real estate.
What
Yep.
up, though?
What up, though?
What up?
We
Shaka got hot.
talking about,
It's the second episode.
we talking about back on the market.
Yeah, BMK.
Yeah, back on the market.
So, I guess we all reached those impasses where it might come back to the market.
Yeah. So what does that mean for? So my sellers, a lot of sellers, they kind of like take the lead from me. What should we do? Or the buyer want an extension. They're having closing delays with the lender. The buyer can't control it. Maybe something happened, and the seller's like, "What should we do?" So you got either extend this one for 2 weeks, or start all over with a new deal that's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks to close. Mm-hmm. But then you have some of those lenders that'll say, well, if we come to the table with a new deal, since you already got the appraisal, you did all the repairs, we can transfer that appraisal, if it's FHA most of the time, and we can close this out in 2 weeks because the buyer already fully underwritten and approved. Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with a buyer, you've already done one extension, then another. It starts to become uncertain at that point. Like, when are we closing?
Yeah.
So,
I think, what do we have? So the contract, let's say this scenario is the contract has expired.
right.
But the lender has not denied the file. As a matter of fact, the lender is saying that they are going to close, and we're not dealing with the broker.
Right.
Not to, knock on any brokers, but you know what I mean?
Right.
We're dealing with the direct lender, bank, a large corporation. And, they're just saying, we had this hang up, which was actually reasonable.
Right.
But, so how do you make the decision? And I think the problem in this particular scenario that I'm talking about is the transparency of the people on the other side and the communication. So at what point do you start to go, okay, enough is enough?
So I think that's what Reggie was saying, and it's a combination of which I both just said.
Yeah.
So the more information that you know on the sales side to be able to make the decision, the better. And then also, I think that's where the backup offers come in. That's why I think that's one of the best things that's happened, that accepting backup offer on Realcom, because people still, instead of it, when they see pending, some people be like, that's already on the contract. No need to go see it. But the accepting backup offer, letting them know that even though it's under contract, there's still some contingencies that they got to get through. So people are making those backup offers, and I think that helps. So if you have, if you're in a situation where you have several backup offers, you can get a little creative,
Yeah, and I think the last situations that I've been in personally, that's been like the strategy, going back into those backup offers, calling those individuals and saying, hey, this is back on the table. It changes when, the contract has actually expired. You do find people who are still interested. I think some of the points that you made about things being already done, like your appraisal and your inspections, that gives people in those backup spaces the opportunity to know if they actually want to move forward, so we don't even have those contingencies anymore. But, what if all of the backup offers, because we're talking about something that is a week from closing.
Right.
Or maybe in the week of closing, so, you're probably 4 weeks, give or take, into the deal already.
Right.
And those people have already found homes.
So why? It depends on why. So if they're not being transparent, then I'm going to say, take a chance, go back on the market. My advice is going to be that, I guess it depends on the property too. Like, if it was a property that was getting a lot of action, it was a property that was not getting a lot of action, then I'm gonna be quiet.
So it's funny, the seller that I was dealing with when this was going on, I was like, Shaka would already put this back on the market.
Yeah.
But let's communicate. Let's talk about a little bit. So that's what we're gonna get into. Like, let's talk a little bit about the pros and the cons
Yeah. So
of putting it back.
when I have a seller, I'm representing a seller, and I'm calling the lender, what's going on, and then 1 week they hit you with, oh, the buyer's credit score dropped, so we got to do a rapid rescore. They had to do this, so it's gonna take 2 weeks. Then 2 weeks go by. Oh, they didn't disclose that they had this on their bank statement, or they whatever with child support. We didn't know that, and I'm like, man, you're supposed to know that up front, or we didn't calculate the taxes right. The property taxes are higher than what we thought. Well, you're supposed to do that at the beginning. I heard all of these, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we could still close it, or we had the buyer conventional, but something happened, so we have to switch it to FHA, and we need another 3 weeks. Well, why are you waiting 30 days to tell me this, right? So now I'm presenting to the seller. My advice to the seller is, hey, we'll give them the extension, but we also writing in there we have the option to accept backup offers, and if they don't close within this time frame, of course we want the mutual release. But a lot of times I'll just tell them, let's kill the deal, see what comes to the table. I'll tell the buyer's agent, a loan rep, keep working on it, because if it doesn't sell, you get it clear to close. We just put the deal back on the table, same terms and everything. So there's ways to protect your client, because every minute you're off the market, you're just losing exposure, and you risk going into a whole different market. So the con for me is waiting on a buyer that probably can't actually close, because I've had that happen where we delayed 2 weeks, then another 2 weeks, and another 2 weeks, and find out they couldn't close for an issue they wasn't going to be able to resolve. And then the buyers lose motivation sometimes. They're like, why? They keep asking me for all of this. Why I got it? Because you need to close, right? So the buyers lose motivation, and nobody's communicating that. Well, we asked the buyer for this 2 weeks ago, and they haven't gotten it to us. Well, why are y'all still holding us up?
Yeah.
But you said a whole lot of, if any of those are the issues. Yeah, we're going back on the market.
Right. No question.
Yeah, we don't even need to talk about. It's got to be something, understandable, and I don't know, without giving people scenarios, it's got to be something reasonable.
Like the one that I think is reasonable. So, for instance, buyer needs X amount of funds in their account to show that they got reserves and money to close. And today is Monday. They don't get paid till Friday. So we need to show that check in their account so they can have X amount of funds. Monday we'll have it clear to close, and now we can schedule this and close by next Friday.
Y'all didn't know y'all was around the house for 6 weeks?
No, that person gets an extension. I'm cool with that. That's a reasonable.
Right.
Now I'm comfortable. That's easy enough.
Right.
Yeah, that's easy enough. But all that, the child support stuff.
Yeah, like stuff popped up, issues you're trying to fix that should have been discussed and discovered. Either the buyer wasn't truthful or honest up front on the application, and they were trying to hide stuff, or they just simply didn't know. Like we talked before about the bank statements. They're a business owner, money over here, money over there. They transferred it. Now, but still, that's either the buyer's fault or the lender's fault. And here we are 6 weeks into this deal, and you're still asking for extensions for something that you can't fix. And I think this is just bad communication on the lender's part or the loan rep when they're telling you they're working on something when they know the buyer's not really participating and motivated to move forward to get them. And they're buying 2 more weeks, and they haven't heard from the buyer 2 weeks ago, since 2 weeks ago.
It's unfortunate because they are the buyers. The buyer is their client, and we aren't.
Yep.
So they got to be working. They should be working on the buyer's behalf. So I understand it, but there's got to be some level of communication. I'm not. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
That was one of the response that I had got from someone else in the organization, like unrelated. We were kind of like talking about it, and he was like, unfortunately, it would be better if it were the buyer's agent making this exact phone call.
Yeah, but
Right.
I've had a deal. We had 3 extensions. They were all 2-week extensions. We were going on our 4th extension, and the buyer signed the extension. I got it back, and I said, "This seller can't wait anymore." It was a probate deal, and finally the lender called me back, and she was just like, "I can't tell you too much, but I haven't heard from this buyer in 4 weeks." And I'm like, I wish you would have just answered my phone 4 weeks after we did
That's
the
how
first
everybody I
extension.
know.
Yeah, you know all the parties involved. But the problem was, how come you haven't heard from the buyer in 4 weeks, but we had 3 2-week extensions?
Yeah.
So obviously the buyer's communicating with the agent, but the buyer's not doing what is needed to get this paperwork.
Because that seems to be always the story.
Yeah.
I can't get in contact with the buyer, or the buyer ain't, especially when you know the loan officer
Right.
on the other side and you represent the seller, but they don't want to look bad. They say, "Oh, I can't give you all the information, but I haven't talked to this buyer in such amount of time."
That's when I killed the deal.
Yeah, but then you're talking to but look, so that happened to me one time, probably with the same person that you talking about. But luckily I was always in communication with the buyer's agent, and she
Right.
did a really, really good job communicating. And she was newer too, but she was on top of it.
Right.
And so I didn't know who to believe at first.
Right.
But somebody lying bad. Somebody lying bad. But I trusted actually no, she ended up taking her. She called me, told me flat out, "I'm sorry. Look, we needed an extension. This broker is not doing XYZ. We flipping
Right.
the loan to another lender."
Right.
And so it was reasonable, right? It was scary,
Man.
but it was reasonable. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I believed her. When they start giving you that information, if somebody is honest enough to tell you that they about to transfer lenders,
Yeah.
I feel like they being honest.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So I had one. I kind of like when they say it on trend. So it's 2 parts. One, people will be in a deal with you, ordered the appraisal and everything, and then all of a sudden they transfer lenders, not for good reasons. It's like some people would switch lenders. Oh, they got better rates, better fees, my buyers, and it's their right to do
Yeah.
so, right? Just notify me so we can call the title company and update it. Don't wait until the last minute, right? But sometimes they transfer lenders because the buyer got denied. And I had this happen, and they asked them for an extension. We got an extension. Now all of a sudden I'm getting calls from the new lender like, "Who are you?" Right? Nobody ever told me. So I immediately called the old lender, the loan rep, and of course he's pissed off. It's like, "Well, we denied it because of this." Now I don't know if he was supposed to tell me that. And I'm like, the new lender can't do this loan either,
Yeah.
right? So why are we even playing this game? So yeah, you have to keep fighting to get the information. But the minute somebody tells me I haven't spoke to the buyer in a week or 2 weeks and we've already done an extension, that kills the deal for me.
I know for me, flipping the lender.
Right.
So when we know we have a qualified borrower, you got to go. I need you to go my preferred lender. As
the seller.
as the seller.
Right.
I need you to go my preferred lender, because
If it's real.
if it's real, and then we'll know,
Right.
if we're gonna be able to get this closed.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you ain't willing to do that, then yeah, we going back with a merger.
All right.
Yeah. And if you get it together before we get a new deal, we'll be happy to close. But I need an actual clear to close. I don't need, we want to put it back on the table because we should have a clear to close by Wednesday.
Should have a clear to close. Go
Yeah,
ahead
the
and schedule the
Wednesday come.
closing for 3 weeks straight. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, just give at some point you should just give the real information, and now no one has to be frustrated.
Call me when it's clear. Don't tell me, go ahead and we should have, today's Monday. We should have it clear to close by tomorrow. Go ahead and schedule it for Friday so we have enough time. Yeah, I would love to, right? But Then here we are Thursday. We don't have the clear yet. We got to reschedule. Because I don't think people realize what impact that has on the seller. When you got a seller that's selling this home, they have to close on the next one by a deadline, and they need the funds from this one to close, or they have to keep getting extensions on their end, waiting on you. So the communication is key.
And sometimes it costs people a whole lot of money. That's on here too. Like, you know, if you got like investor clients and they're using hard money,
Right.
and they right at the end of the life of their loan, and now they got to pay for an extension, you done cost them $3,000 to $5,000.
Or somebody was getting foreclosed on, and the sheriff's sale is a week or two away, and now you did that extension just by simply going to sheriff's sale cost them money, right?
Yeah.
So I like what the banks used to do this all the time with our listings. Like, they got to the point where if you needed an extension, they were real hard on people paying cash. If you needed an extension, you had to pay for it.
Period.
So like a 15-day extension would be, you know, $500. A 30-day would be $1,000, and they would be happy to give it to you, but it wasn't a deposit; it was an extension fee.
Yeah.
So
So how do y'all feel about
That's
that?
a good idea, though.
Well, that's what I'm about to say.
I like that.
I used to be like that all the time. So that, I mean, that's how. So I don't do that anymore because you don't really need to. But back in the day, so that they wouldn't leave, you would entice the seller. Hey, I'm sorry for inconveniencing you.
right,
We need an extension. We agree to give you X amount of dollars
Right.
for an extension.
right,
You know what I mean?
But I like it in this resale market because, like I said, when we're dealing with, you know, people like ourselves or
Right.
our clients who are investors, like people who are going to have some serious costs. Like my last two closings were like that, where it was like, no, we have to close
right.
because this is going to cost me a whole lot of money if we do not get this done like
Yep.
this week.
Right.
And so, you know, maybe that's the thing. Okay, if you absolutely need an extension, you have to pay for it, and this is how much it's going to cost.
Right.
And if you're serious and you're motivated, you don't have a problem with that.
Right, because you're going to close anyway.
But what if they don't have the money? But they are serious and they are motivated, but they don't have the money to pay.
Then they probably don't need to be buying. Or you now you can flip that and say, we'll apply it as a credit at closing.
Yeah.
But the seller wants to be, because sometimes you have a seller that's managing two properties. So the one that they're selling and the one that they just bought, and now this one is vacant. So your extension is costing them more money to maintain the vacant property. So
Yeah, it was something else that I was just thinking about too in regards to the monetary outcome back to it, because I completely
Right.
forgot. But
or
let's talk.
we negotiate terms, so I'm gonna need more occupancy because this delayed me on the next property, and now their situation changed, so I'm gonna need an extra 2 weeks.
Or I just want my money.
Right.
You told me you was gonna give it to me, and now
Right.
you ain't give me my money when you told me I was gonna have it. I was
Right.
expecting my money. I don't have no hardship. It's just you told me you was gonna close by this
Right.
date. That's the contract date. You're not closing by the contract date, so you didn't honor your side of the contract. And yeah, I want to be compensated for it.
But you know what's funny? When you talk to realtors from other states, Michigan is one of the few states that have the deposit laws that we have, where you can give somebody $1,000 earnest money deposit, tie their house up for 30, 45 days, and just walk away and still need a mutual release. And the seller has no fight in the game because you got a denial letter. Most states, once you give that deposit,
Boy, Reggie's. This went to Reggie's.
no, I'm just saying, like you paying somebody a deposit with good faith that you're going to be able to close, right? If a lender markets or tells you you need a 620 credit score, this is what the requirements are, and you know you don't have those requirements, why are you taking my home off the market?
So why is the lender giving you a pre-approval? Or
Exactly.
you know what I mean? I'm
Right,
mad at
so
the lender than
the accountability is on the lender and the buyer, because now you're tying up the seller. So that's why in different states, it's different when it comes to the EMD. Once you in that deal and that deposit is there, that deposit is gone.
Yeah, I think you should start adding verbiage. So I think for sure with the extensions, especially when you're talking about you got to the fourth one, like at some point we need to have some verbiage in there that, you know, no later than this date, and no need for a mutual release for the earnest money deposit.
Right.
It's automatically forfeited. But then you'll see some contracts too before you sign them, like with title companies most of the time.
Right.
where they throw that verbiage in there about you know, it going to arbitration. It does have to be like they will or disclose up front, like it does have to be signed off on all parties, or
Right.
they will up front say, you know, you've gotten into this deal, and so you do not get your money back in this particular transaction.
Right.
So I think that, you know, just getting smarter about it on
You mean
our
before or after the extension? Before
the offer is like accepted.
Oh, when the title company's holding the EMD.
Yep.
Right.
so the title company, so before the offer is accepted, the title company saying what?
Well, so the offer is accepted, and then you have to get the earnest money over to the title company, and when they send their wire instructions, they will say this is what's going to happen with your earnest money deposit.
Yeah, so they have some title companies have a similar clause to our contract saying that it'll either be forfeited or it's subject to your contract, or they'll just say it'll be held until we get a mutual release. So each title company is different.
So they're not telling you that that is. So how can the title company tell you that your EMD is going to be
based on the contract. They're going strictly by the contract.
right? Okay, so just
Right.
based on the contract, so they can't say that it's going to be. I mean, because there are reasons in the contract. There are clauses in the contract that do allow you to get your EMD back.
Yeah, most title companies that I know, they won't release it until they get a mutual release.
Right.
If they're holding that.
But before they take it, if they give you those disclaimers, that's kind of why they do that too. So don't send us your money if you don't agree to these terms
Right.
per your contract too.
Because so here's the reason. Like, if I'm the buyer's brokerage, right, and I collect the EMD, and we've seen this a lot of times, and the deal falls apart, maybe, and we don't have a mutual release, the buyer broker can take that risk and give that deposit back to the buyer. And the seller may put it back on the market, sell it, and never come after that buyer broker, right? And that's a risk that buyer's broker's taking. When you get that money to the title company, it's deadlocked. Like, they're not giving it until they get a mutual release, if that's their policy.
That's what I know. As the buyer, that you're gonna, if this doesn't happen, you're gonna forfeit your EMD.
But because most contracts say that. But it's got all these contingencies in here.
Okay.
But the title company is saying, when you give it to us, it's likely you can forfeit your EMD, but it still has to reference the actual contract.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. But you were saying something about a specific, like something that comes over from the title company that says that if XYZ doesn't happen, you forfeit your EMD, right?
It's an addendum, the same way. It's
comes from the title company?
it's what Reggie just explained.
That comes from.
Yeah, it comes from the title company. It's like additional.
Yeah, the title companies have different. So when it comes,
One second.
correct.
Did I miss some of that?
Oh, you're good. Once you sit back down, start with the title companies,
Okay.
and then continue the sentence or whatever you'd like. I'll say it. 3, 2. Go ahead.
All right, so the title companies, what happened is, like, we have our state licensing laws for real estate. For the broker has certain requirements for escrow, right? Escrow accounts and things of that nature. Most title companies, they're following whatever the law is. So whatever the contract says is what it is. So that's why I can make an offer on your home. I never even had the money to buy it, and I give you a $5,000 deposit, and I put it with a broker in their escrow account, right? Technically, regardless of what happened, that broker can only release those funds, even if it's clear I forfeited on the deal, right? They can only release those funds with a mutual release or a court order, right? The title company, if they choose, they can interpret that different and release those funds as forfeited, right?
Right.
But the state law says we have to, as brokers, we have to follow those guidelines. So the title company can have their own agreement, but most title companies now are saying we're going to follow the contract and we need a mutual release.
And I feel like that's the way it's always been. But let me see.
No, that was the reason.
Well,
That was the reason a lot of people were saying send the money to the title company, because the banks used to do it all the time. They would say the deposit has to go to Trot and Trot or whatever title companies representing the bank. And as soon as that deal don't close on that day, they were sending that money, and nobody was going back and suing Trot and Trot, because the banks were saying our contracts supersede whatever your state law is. But you can still argue that because you're still dealing with Michigan real estate law, but most people didn't even bother to. People fight regular sellers, but they didn't fight the banks.
Yeah, banks, because they got real attorneys that really understood the law.
Right. But what I'm saying is the title companies, going back to her point, the title companies at the time that were representing the bank, they were representing a seller. So once you sent your money to them, they made it clear, this, if you don't close, you're not getting this back. We're obligated to send this to the seller based on our contract and the contract that you signed, which was the bank's contract.
Well, you saying if you don't, so you mean if you don't honor the contract, you get that money back. So it's not if you don't close, because you can get a denial and still get your EMD back.
Well, it depends on, yeah, exactly.
But if you don't have mutual release, because you can get a denial and then the seller can still say, well, they wasted all of this time. We've been off of the market all this time.
Right.
We did this many repairs per your request, and I'm not signing the mutual release.
Great, but then that's going to go to arbitration. But my point is that the title company can't tell you that you're just going to lose your EMD.
Yeah, especially in the situations where they didn't come in and they didn't already have that agreed upon. So like the scenario where I'm talking about, and the one that Reggie's talking about, these are contracts and things that people are going to see up front.
Yeah, it's not. I'm asking. I want to see that contract because I ain't never seen. I would like the contract where they tell me that I'm good. There's no way that no title company or not no person, because there is a contract.
Oh, I'll send you.
There's no way that somebody could tell me that if we don't close, I'm not getting my EMD back, or my client ain't getting their EMD back. They're crazy. Now, if we don't honor
all the time,
if we don't honor our contract,
it used to happen.
Because within that, we're talking about closing, not closing for things that are with it. So yeah, we're talking about the contract. You're not.
We're talking about forfeiting
your contract.
Okay, you're saying you didn't. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So
like if you get a loan denial, that's different.
Yeah, your inspection goes bad, that's different.
Loan denial, the things that you would do to make sure that your client gets their EMD. Obviously, if you get, that's why the extension is so important, right? We all realtors here, right? So we all understand that you don't wait to the day before the contract date to get an extension, right? You start seeing issues going on in your underwriting, then you should be asking for an extension well ahead of time.
And some sellers are gonna say.
So if you decide not to, then that's your agent.
So, but every time you don't get a extension, you can send a seller's agent an extension. That don't mean that the seller has to sign that extension.
But if I go to my lender now and I say, hey, we got to close this by such and such, and the lender say it's not possible, then what you gonna get?
You need to get an extension. Right?
If they don't get an extension, what you gonna get?
Here's the red flag.
You're gonna get a loan denial, and then I'm gonna get my EMD back.
Here's the red flags. Your closing is, let's say it's November or whatever. Your closing deadline is November 15th, right? Mm-hmm. And you call the lender to see how it's going. You call them back. You haven't heard anything from them. Now you got 1 week. Mm-hmm. The lender's still not responding. You call the buyer's agent. You heard anything? How are we looking? Right? You don't hear a response. You pretty much know somebody's going to ask for an extension or you're going to get hit with a loan denial, right? So you have to be proactive if you're the listing agent. As the buyer's agent, like 2 weeks in, you should be like, okay, where are we missing? Do we have everything back? And the loan rep should say, I have everything we're submitting for underwriting, right? If you're not there 2 weeks to a week and a half before that closing deadline, you're going to have some issues. So now you address the extension, but then you address also why are we extending and what are we waiting on? If you're waiting on maybe they paid off something on their credit and you waiting for a letter to come back to prove it was paid, right? You can't control that. You might get it in a week. You might get it in a month, right? So how long of an extension do we need? But if they're not communicating that and they say, oh, we need to extend for a week, well, you can't guarantee you're going to get it back in a week.
Agreed.
Right.
Which is why that is stupid. But a lot of people do it because they're playing games.
Right.
I was just addressing the fact that, I guess we'll do it on another episode when we have that contract that y'all talking about, because I want to see, so if they came back during that extension period and now they changed, now it's an addendum, and the addendum is now changing the contract. So now
they have to honor the addendum. That's why you
Yeah.
send it to the title company immediately.
Yeah. So now you got new leverage, right? So now you're changing the verbiage of the contract. You know what I mean? So now you're saying, yeah, in addition to that, now if you don't close, you ain't getting your EMD back. Right. There's no way that they can do that like when you submit your offer, y'all saying, because this
it used to happen all the time.
Yeah, that's because they didn't have the right people representing.
No, you gotta understand that the bank's contracts were worded a certain way to where technically they were still supposed to comply with Michigan law.
Yeah, get your money back.
But it was worded a way you got to keep in mind. Like I said, every state is different. The banks had a template that they use, and a lot of the asset managers used to be like, well, we close, how come we can't get the EMD? So we, as brokers, we were saying we can't get an EMD back because it went from the buyer's broker holding the EMD to send it to the listing agent. But we had all these EMDs, and the bank say, well, you gotta send us the EMD because of the contract. We say, no, but that's not Michigan law. We need a mutual release. The buyer won't sign a mutual release. So the bank switched to, we gonna have you start sending the EMD to the title company. Because the title companies work for us, they gonna send the money and we're willing to fight it out in court.
That's what they were.
Right? And most buyers didn't even argue it at that point because the money was already gone. But when it was with us, we couldn't send it because now we get in trouble with the buyer.
Right. Same way that they would.
So,
and people just not fighting.
Well, no, their contract stated that. And if the buyers, like, you're right, they could have argued and fought that. But your question was you wanted to see the contract. There was plenty of.
No, the contract that states that you're not getting that. If you don't close, you're not getting your money back. That doesn't exist.
When you sent your money to these title companies that was representing the bank, it was clear as day. We're holding this. We're representing the seller, and we're basing this on the seller's contract. Seller's contract had in there, this is a cash deal. If it don't close by this date, it's considered default.
Okay. All right, now you just...
Hold on, man. No, but what's happening here is, because I think when I brought it up, it was just merely saying you can draft addendums to benefit you so that you don't have to sign a mutual release in order to get the earnest money.
Right.
So whatever the semantics are,
but
we're just talking. Yeah, because I think that when we're sitting up having a conversation, you're sitting on like very specific words. So yeah, we know we're not talking about just going to close, and there's a purchase agreement in place. There are clauses and things. Each contingency goes away after a certain amount of time, and then you get through to the end of it. And now we're talking about, when
contract.
You could be out of contract. You could be coming up to being out of contract. The seller's agent may say, well, shoot, we only got 4 or 5 days on our contract. They asked for an extension. We ain't going to sign this because we going to wait to the end. You could try to go back and get the denial, but depending on what are all of the things that have happened as to whether or not we're going to sign a mutual release, or we may sign an extension, but we may add a clause in there that says we'll sign this extension only if you're willing to release your earnest money deposit if you don't close by this new date. There are all types of things that you can do.
Which is the reason why they're adding that clause, because they can't just take your EMD. So now they got to come in and say
was the point.
that, hey, with this clause now,
That was always the point.
You're signing an addendum.
That was always the point.
Let me ask y'all this, right? So you got closing date, whatever, February 31st, right? Closing date, no communication for the week from the buyer's agent or lender, and the closing date has expired. Now it's the first of the month. Do you just simply put it right back on the market?
You should.
Yeah. You don't even call them back, right?
Right.
All right.
So, all right, back to the show topic. we were talking about going back on the market. I want to know the pros of sticking it out with the current buyer, the buyer that you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to give them extensions and time to close.
You can close
Close quicker. You already done the repairs. You already done addressed the inspection issues. You already got an appraisal that you're comfortable with because you made it this far.
That's big.
You've already done most of the appraisal repairs. If
The
it were
inspection and their appraisal, them huge.
So you got it right there. You at the finish line, hopefully, and you can close this soon versus starting over with a new buyer. New buyer may come with a different price, new repair issues, possibly a new appraisal, and it may or may not appraise. And you're gonna have you starting all over again, another 40.
Avoiding potentially going into a declining market.
Yeah, and the time because between the first offer and now, you might be in a whole different type of
Right.
market. Yeah.
All right. What are some of the cons of going back on the market?
You weren't getting a lot of action, or you could be in the declining market now.
Yeah.
So, but if you weren't getting a lot of offers in the first, or a lot of action in the first place, then going back on the market is not something I would want to do.
Yeah, but that's why I said I don't see the cons as long as you leave an open invitation to the previous buyer. Hey, we don't want to tie this up because we don't see any closure. But if you can bring closure to this, we'll come back with the same terms or whatever.
I got another con.
So-
You mess around and you do get out of contract,
Right.
and then they keep working on their side, but then come back. Right. You know what? You sit in the market another 30 days. Well,
We've been on the market 30 days because of you.
yeah.
Yeah, because so now you're dealing, that's one of the cons, dealing with the
Right.
negative buyer's perspective of the house coming back to the market. So you
Right.
gotta,
And sitting on the market again.
Yeah.
and then spooking the current buyer. So maybe you kill their motivation.
Right.
All right. And holding costs increase, investor extensions and costs and things like that.
But you might have that anyway. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, because if in Reggie's case, he went a whole 2 more deals worth of extensions. You know what I mean? So they already had that additional holding cost. But yeah, I just would be, yeah. So I really don't want to go back on market unless there's got to be something bad and just horrible communication.
Yeah.
Pros of going back on the market.
You can possibly find a new and better buyer with new terms because, like, I've had deals where it was like the buyer was borderline. We were giving up a ton of concessions. We did repairs, everything. Now we're FHA ready. We did the inspection, had a thorough inspection, passed everything. We ready, and you got a good property that you can resell and possibly not have to give up the 4% or 6% concessions that you had. And yeah, that's really the only pro.
I thought the pros of going back on the market. You could possibly get a higher offer.
Right.
I put that on there.
Yeah,
I offer.
is that likely? I don't know, but it happens.
Coming
It
into
happened
an
to us.
inclining- Yeah, you come into an inclining market too.
Yeah.
So, things could be inclining. We can have some things that change in the economy.
Right.
Like you said, maybe now we can offer that these repairs have been made,
Yeah.
and maybe you can get a better offer.
saying that already, property already.
Maybe the tenants moved out
appraised.
the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, that
So it's
too.
showing
So it
better?
makes it more convenient for the buyer. Already have the FHA appraisal if it was a FHA deal. But I've had it come back on the market, sell for $1,000 less, but it was a cash deal and we closed in 2 weeks.
Or the appraisal that you got was higher,
Yeah.
and now you can advertise that.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a few pros, but I think overall, I guess it really depends
It's a
on the
risk either
situation.
way.
Yeah, it's a risk either way, and I think that's the hard part to get past. Is like I'm in a pickle anyways.
Yeah.
That's why we be sticking it out with the
But the current, because you just don't want the risk of whatever could potentially happen, because you just don't know. It could be
Right.
better. You could end up winning. You know, you could go back on the market, get a better situation, and you close, and you'd be like, man, that really worked out.
We had $10,000 on that we could have got if we could have just waited another. I mean, if they would have not closed on the actual day.
Yeah, that's what it was. We
Right.
had like a super strict. They was like,
We was
look,
not playing.
I was telling Shaka like, hopefully they don't call.
I didn't think they was when I
Yeah,
they
like
got
they
it
not-
together like last second.
But
Got
see,
it last second.
that go back to what I said earlier, buyer motivation, because sometimes the lender keeps coming back with things, and I think that's a long rep fault too. Like, you should know how to structure a file, what to collect, so that you don't have to keep going back. You should know like what the underwriters are expecting, so you can discourage a buyer. They lose motivation, and they were expecting to close. They already told their landlord they moving on the first. They gave their landlord the finger, and now you hear
Right.
3 weeks into it. Now they like, oh, I might have to pay rent again, this, and that. And you keep asking me for, I already gave you a bank statement. Now you want another one. Why didn't you just ask me for the
Yeah,
previous
buyers
2
be
months?
mad as hell about that.
Yeah, like I already gave you this. I showed you all the court documents that I had. What else?
Don't
do you
ask me for
want?
nothing else.
Yeah, so the buyers lose motivation, and that's where you get. Oh, I asked the buyer for that 3 weeks ago. They haven't gotten it to me. And I haven't heard from the buyer in 2 weeks. So, but when you got something in there where, all right, if y'all don't do this, this not gonna happen by this date, or it's gonna cost you as the buyer, like maybe your rate lock gonna expire, and maybe your payment gonna go up
That's one of the cons.
$60. You know what I'm saying?
That ain't going back on the market.
But I mean, just saying. So yeah.
So it was a question I forgot to ask. I don't know if I added it to my notes, but we're gonna just do a bonus question.
Yeah.
Whose job is it to educate the buyer on financing and closing? The do's and the don'ts.
But it's mainly the lender, but it's both.
It's the lender, because that's their responsibility, is to get the loan done. But whatever knowledge the agent has, they should do it as well.
So I was telling my seller this about one of these. I said, I could explain something to him, and he'd be like, well, why didn't that buyer's agent tell them that? Or something like that. And I'd be like, well, the difference is when you're dealing with experienced people who have been in the business, who have been through some things, we have a little bit more information.
Right.
And then when you got old school training, it's stuff that we were taught back when that newer agents just aren't taught.
Right.
And I said, and I have a mortgage license. So I can explain certain things that maybe a younger, 20-something agent may not have enough wherewithal to be able to explain.
Some of them 40-something.
But hold on. But I told him, I said, and the crazy thing is, it's not his job. Like, I get it.
Right.
We should be able to consult with the clients and, talk about some of the do's and the don'ts. You want to be able to do that. But technically, he did his job.
Right.
And that was a fine.
You mentioned something that's important. I want people to understand. So, an agent's expertise is not based on their age or how long they've been in the business. It's based on how many deals they had and how many actual deals they had fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Because so if you had a deal fall apart because all of a sudden y'all found out this buyer had child support issues, or they didn't report some income somewhere, that's experience you build in. So now you can be proactive on your new deals. Okay, I had a deal fall apart because they did the sewer scope and this came up. Well, I never had this happen before. How do you solve it? Well, if you've done it enough times, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, when you bought your home, that you have a sewer scope, or maybe you want to get one done in advance before we get an inspection. Or if it comes up, we've seen this happen, this is the approximate cost, right? So be prepared. You're in a 100-year-old home, it's likely to have some sewers or storm drain issues, right? If you never
You in
replaced it.
Detroit?
If you haven't lived there. If you ain't been in there using the bathroom.
Your drain got a trap.
You tell the buyer, look, it's 6 of y'all. The person you brought it from, it was just them. You may have some issues that present itself because you're using more wear and tear. So this comes from experience. You can have an agent that only been in the business 3 or 4 years, close 30, 40 deals or more a year, and have all of this experience and knowledge versus someone that's been in the business 20 years that only closed 3 deals a year.
Yeah.
So
100%, or the reverse though. So, cause I run, y'all full-time agents. I'm part-time agent at best, right?
Right.
But I'm just saying, it's a lot of. I see a lot. I mean, it was crazy to me to see.
Give me a T-shirt,
people
man.
don't know what the hell they doing.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it for a long time.
But see, you also flip houses and you're a contractor. So, and you did mortgage, right?
Yeah,
So, so you got the experience you got the transactional experience.
Right.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
But I'm saying you be seeing them agents that got big numbers that sold a lot of homes or in dollars figures or whatever the hell it is, or units or whatever they're.
That's because they're not working their deals no more. They just collecting a contract and doing something
Right.
else.
But still, we still don't know. Even when I'm not working no deals no more, but I'm still. If one of my agents call me, I'm gonna know how to. I'm how to answer because I experienced. I did it before.
Right.
You know what I mean? This. Oh, you know what? This is what you got to do. You got to do this. What? Let me talk to their broker. You know what I mean?
But some agents they're successful, but they only work in their niche.
Yeah.
Right. So just like with attorneys, you be like, how couldn't you know that? Because it's not their niche. It's not their practice. So like when people call me all the time about land contract situations or different stuff, or even tax sales, foreclosure tax sales, and clearing title, that's not their niche. That's not what they do. And they probably do 40 million a year, but this is not their market. They never dealt with that.
They don't have experience with that.
Right.
They got experience with the easy deals.
All right. So
Back up
market. I just think that it's not a clear answer. You do have to kind of weigh it out before just jumping back out there, right? It's not.
It's like a relationship. Like, should you stay in it?
Yeah, grassing.
Exactly.
You let it go, or you start over. Starting over good though.
That's a wrap.